Good evening and welcome to another week of Fan View, the show where we talk about whatever we want from the perspective of a fan. My name is Sarah Cooper and I am joined tonight by my lovely co-host, Aaron. How are you, Aaron?
Good, Sarah. How are you?
I'm surviving. I'm sad I'm not at Disneyland, hence the ears. But glad to be here with you all again for another week. So, as you may have guessed by the ears, tonight we are discussing theme parks within Australia, outside of Australia, our personal experiences, and what does the future hold for the world of theme parks. So, Aaron, you've been to a lot more theme parks than me. Are you excited to discuss this tonight?
I am. It's a fun topic tonight. I mean, after the week we've had with Batgirl getting cancelled and other things happening, it's good to be able to just sit back, do a travelogue of some of our favourite theme parks, talk about what we like, talk about where we'd wish to go, and things that could be cool to happen in the future.
Yes, very much that. Now, Aaron, I do have a bit of a admission. Rod has just said he finds Australia's lack of theme parks disturbing, as do I. I have an admission. I have only been to, I think, a total of three theme parks in my life. I've been to Disneyland, I have been to Universal Hollywood, and I've been to Luna Park. And if there's any others, I don't remember going to them because I was a child who was afraid of rides. So I probably just hid and ate expensive snacks. So I don't remember any of that. But you, Aaron, you've been to quite a few of them, haven't you?
Being a fan, theme parks, and I guess the whole thing there that we're looking at is theme. I've always aspired to go to as many theme parks as I could, just because I love genres and I love the kind of things that they use in the parks to attract people. So I've been to a few theme parks. I can't remember the first one I went to. The earliest would probably be Luna Park. I remember going on the Ghost Train when I was in Cubs. I think that would be the earliest theme park I remember going to. And of course, the wonderful Wobby's World. For anyone who grew up locally in Victoria, that will leave everyone mentally scarred.
Ah, yes, Wobby's World. I never went, but I remember seeing the ads for it. As I said, I was a child that was afraid of all things thrill and anything scary, which I very much made up for as an adult. But as a child, I didn't want to. We'd go to the show, the local my hometown Benalla. We'd go to the Benalla show, and I didn't want to go on any of the rides if they moved too fast. I was scared of them all. So I've got a fun fact about me. The first roller coaster I ever went on, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Luna Park. It was Hyperspace Mountain at Disneyland. So I
Well,
started out just the correct way with a difficult one.
I think the first roller coaster I ever went on was the Corkscrew at SeaWorld. If you're talking about real roller coasters, like you, I went to the show. The show is interesting. We could do a whole episode on the show because that's sort of a different theme every year because it keeps up with whatever's current with pop culture. We have the Mad Mouse at the show, which is kind of I think the biggest sort of roller coaster in Melbourne, apart from Luna Park. So there's not much locally. Like Rod was saying, there isn't a dearth of theme parks in Australia.
No, we are unfortunately a bit unlucky in that instance. There is I do want to get onto that, but I think that'll be probably at the end of our discussion. So, Aaron, you have prepared a few slides for us this evening. So, if we'd like to
I
bring those up.
Now we're going to go around the world, and we've brought back some postcards, and some of them are even have Sarah in because I rated her Facebook page as well. But the whole idea of theme parks and looking at theme parks, I thought it would be cool taking a look at some of the greatest movie genres and how they've been adapted into rides and different parks around the world. Now I can remember going to this. This is the first time I went to Disneyland. I went to Temple of the Forbidden Eye when it was first opening, and that's got to be about 30 years ago now. I was thinking about it, it makes me feel old. And the thing that I think makes a great theme park ride is when the franchise that they choose to theme the ride on really lives through the ride and gives the person who's going through the ride the actual experience of being in the movie or television series. And Temple of the Forbidden Eye is absolutely fantastic. I've got to say, Disney are the masters of doing this, where even the lines and the queues, and when you go through, and the waiting time is taken up by cool things because so much thought has gone into the creation of the ride. You've been on this one, haven't you, Sarah?
I have. Now, my thoughts on, even though I come at this from a very uh, uneducated perspective of, someone who hasn't actually had those experiences, I have been doing my research. So while I've been on this one, I also am aware that there are two other roller coasters that are Indiana Jones themed. There is one at not Euro Disney, Paris Disneyland. They don't like Euro Disney because it sounds like money. So the Paris Disneyland, they have a one that is a roller coaster themed on the minecart chase from Temple of Doom, which I really want to check out one day. And at Tokyo Disney, or Disney Sea, they have another one which is, the name is Crystal Skull related, but the actual ride is more searching for the Fountain of Youth. So it's another story again, which is very cool. The fact that they've changed the story each time they've taken it overseas.
It is interesting, and as we'll see when we look at some of the different parks that are coming up, Disney like to do the thing where they have the same attraction at each park. So whatever you advertise, wherever you go, you can go to that attraction and be happy because what you want to see is there. But as Sarah just said, from country to country, they'll have the same theme, and they might have a different ride or a different attraction to do with it, which has left me disappointed. I know with Disney again at the Star Tours, the Tokyo one has like a full-size AT-AT, and I saw pictures of that before I went the first time to the American one, which doesn't have that there at all. So you're like, oh, well, what's happening here? But I've also found theme parks are a bit like movies you grow up with. You're a lot more forgiving on rides and attractions that you went on when you were a kid as an adult than if you just go cold as an adult. Say Luna Park, for example, a lot of locals that have amazing memories of that from growing up, and how scary the ghost train was, or how amazing the Big Dipper is. And when you go, a lot of that nostalgia from your childhood comes back. But if you just go along as a parent for the first time, it can all be a bit cheesy and crap. So I'm wondering, from your point of view, as you going mainly as an adult, if you see theme parks from a kind of a different view from me.
Look, I'm lucky because my first experience was Disneyland, and Disneyland is one of those places where they spare no expense. They really care about you having that good experience. Now, I really enjoyed the Indiana Jones ride when I was there, but Rod, my partner, he was there with me, as you would have seen his comment before. He went the year it opened, and then he went in 2019 with me. And apparently a lot of the lights have gone. Now, they did talk about updating it in 2020. Now, it was meant to close in 2020 and be refurbished. Now, from people that have been since, I've heard that the refurbishment was not as extensive as originally planned. I assume due to budget issues, due to the park being closed with COVID. So while they did update some bits, apparently there's still huge sections that don't have the lights they used to. So apparently it used to light up with lava and things like that, but we didn't have any of that when we went, unfortunately.
Well, the thing that I remembered, I remember exactly the same, where there was lava flow in it that I don't remember seeing when I went through the last time. Also rock falls that I don't remember seeing the last time we went. And the other thing that might be the memory cheating, I remember an actor actually playing Indiana Jones over and over again at the end of the ride, sort of running along beside it or something. I might be confusing that with the Battlestar Galactica at Universal, but the memory does cheat sometimes on stuff like that. Overall, it's one of those rides, if it does get danker and darker, it doesn't affect it too much because you're in the middle of a cave system anyway. But I love the Indiana Jones ride just because as you go through it, you have Rhys Davies doing his, they've filmed new footage of Sala explaining what's going on. So it is one of those rides that even if you're there for 45 minutes waiting, it's an interesting queue just to get onto the ride. And then it is a good ride. For Disneyland, it is one of the more exciting, thrilling rides that, really young kids might be a little bit scared by.
So Michael Briarwood has taken this opportunity to remind everyone that Toys on Trial of Season 2 is premiering tomorrow. So tune in for that. I'll be in the background doing tech things. Sorry. Yeah, look, the Indiana Jones ride, it's one of those ones that it really does benefit from. It'll benefit from some TLC when they get a chance to do that. We did actually have an experience where there was a breakdown of the line. There were several breakdowns of the ride while we were there, and at one point we were in the fast pass line waiting to go, and basically the guy in the line with us, he just gave us a bunch of Indiana Jones trivia, all of which my partner Rod, being a massive Indiana Jones nerd, was able to answer with no problems, to the point that he started asking him the questions. So we ended up getting given the little decoder cards to try and decode there's all these symbols on the walls that do have a message and a meaning. So we got handed a couple of those, which was a very exciting thing. Unfortunately, that night we didn't get to ride again because the ride did then just get shut down for the evening. So
Yeah.
but better the ride getting shut down than somebody getting injured, I'm sure.
Well, I have an experience like that with the Star Walking ride, where when that first opened, I planned a trip to America just to go on that ride, and got to Disneyland, and when it opened, sprinted to the ride, and it had closed for maintenance on for 3 days, and we were in Anaheim for 3 days. So the first time I went to ride on it, I couldn't. So I was feeling pretty sour about that.
You said Star Walking. Do you mean Star Tours or the...
Star Tours, yeah.
Okay, because I'm like, Star Walking, they have a ride? Wow.
No.
That was incredible. All right. Yeah. So moving on from the Indiana Jones ride, we have the Pandora experience that exists at Disney World. What was that one like, Aaron?
So, no, well, this one I actually haven't been on. This is one of my wish list ones I wish I could go on. And I think this one I've highlighted because it is one of those amazing things where they've created an entire ride around a movie, and they've in an entire world around it as well, where you have not just the ride, but the entire section of the park has the floating rocks and all the wildlife and all of the plant life that there is on Pandora. And then you have the ride that has all the animatronic Na'vi on that look exactly like they do from the movie, and they've all been voiced by original voice artist people and things like that. But the thing I find amazing about this, all the floors in the world are actual LED TVs with motion sensors. So when you actually step on the TV, it reacts to your footprints and leaves luminescent footprints behind you that slowly fade away as you walk through the world and walk through the ride. And that's one of the reasons I think, as we go through tonight and look at the stuff, Disney is a whole next level up when it comes to designing these rides. And I would totally recommend anyone who's got Disney Plus checking out the Imagineers, which is a history of the Disney parks and the different people and the different concepts and what goes into a lot of the things we're going to be talking about.
I've watched that, and I've also watched a bunch of behind the scenes things that didn't go so well at Disney, and things that failed, and the history of a lot of things. So but the Avatar area, it is that Pandora area, it is just stunning. It's unfortunate that the movie sort of dropped out of the consciousness for a lot of people, as I did personally enjoy it quite a lot. I know it's just a very simple plot, but it's very pretty, and I'm very much hoping the additional, how many films they're doing, another 4, another 5, however many there are, I hope that they are able to renew interest, because that park looks stunning.
It does. Yeah.
Now, moving on, we have Jaws attacking summer 1993. Aaron, tell us about your Jaws experience.
Now, you could do a whole show again on Universal Studios and the history of that and the rides there. And rides have come and gone. Universal Studios is interesting because they often get a license to a property, and they might get it for 10 years. And at the end of that time, the property disappears, and they have to change things. But one of the things that has been a mainstay at Universal Studios is Jaws. And I've been on it's part of the tram ride tour, but there was a time when there was actually a Jaws ride as well. Now, that was one of the things I wish I could go back in time and go on, because it sounded absolutely amazing, but it was broken about 50% of the time. And it opened in, I think, 93, and it only stayed around for about a year. So even though you can still go on the tram tour and Jaws will attack you and kill someone and blood sprays everywhere from the water. There was another time when you could actually get on pontoon boats and be circled by Jaws, and it was a much greater experience. It apparently failed so badly, there isn't much footage of it around online. And I did a bit of research into it, and most people or most reviews we wanted to go on this and it didn't work properly, so you can understand why it disappeared pretty quickly. But I have heard many different stories about the Jaws ride. You can find pictures online of girls being proposed to with the Jaws popping up behind them, which is a bit of a tradition, and things like that. So it is, again, probably one of those, if you've grown up with, is absolutely awesome. When my son went with us a couple of years ago, and this really fake animatronic Jaws pops out of the water making piston sounds because it's all controlled by air, he was like, what's this meant to be? So you'd have been on the tour, the tram tour, the backlot tour.
I did, and I remember. Yes, it is. It's a very pathetic little Jaws that they've got remaining. But the really fun thing that I did in my research for this episode, I did watch a YouTuber named Defunct Land. So plug for somebody else. He had a video which was a history of Jaws at Universal, and they were talking about all the things that failed. Apparently, there were meant to be underwater sections of the ride. They couldn't make it happen. Apparently, it was an incredibly expensive ride to run. There was a lot of fire and pyrotechnics. Like there was an explosion. And apparently people would often complain that they got burnt from it because they'd feel the heat. It was actually sunburn because they weren't used to, the sun in either Orlando or Hollywood. But no, it was something that unfortunately it just didn't work, and it's very sad because it sounds like Spielberg was directly involved in the making of that ride, and he put a lot of love into it, and so did all the Universal equivalent of Imagineers. But sometimes these things just aren't to be in the world of theme parks.
Yes, they should have.
Gavin, you're right. They do call it Bruce. I apologize.
They should have known from the mechanical shark not working in the movies that they were going to have just as many problems with the theme park version of it. The other thing is, when a theme park ride breaks down, you can fix it. But when that breakdown is underwater, it takes a lot longer to get to it and fix. And as you were saying, I do remember probably the first couple of times, even though it wasn't a ride, when it was just the tram backlot ride, I do remember Jaws pulled a guy out to... It was like some overhead wires and some barrels, and they blew up, and there was a huge explosion. And the last time I went, that wasn't happening anymore. So they cheapened it right back down. Yeah,
no, of course. All right, moving right along, but we are still on Universal. We have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which opened, I think, in around 2000, mid 2000s, I believe it was. Late 2000s or early 2010s, I believe.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about this one? What are your experiences?
So I am a mild Harry Potter fan in that I've watched all the movies, but I wouldn't, so I'm a big collector, or I have to watch them obsessively or read the books over and over or anything like that. But it is one of the most immersive worlds I've been into, and I think that's because the Harry Potter franchise really does appeal to all ages. And you've got one of those franchises where it's fun to be able to see the magic that kids get from going to the studio through an adult's eyes, because where you can see how they make things float or how they do the magical tricks, kids are totally they totally believe what they're seeing, because they go into Hogwarts. You've got the huge castle in the background, which is one of those forced perspective things, but it looms over the whole Harry Potter land and does look like a huge castle. And then it's almost designed to be able to sell stuff to fans, because a lot of the things in Harry Potter are shops they go to, wand shops and pubs and things like that, and be able to recreate it, take everyday food and potterize the names and charge 3 times as much for it. But then it's interesting. I really like how, if you go to a shop there, you have wizards and witches who are in character, who serve you. So it's all part of the experience, even buying stuff. And we'll see this, they do this in Disney as well. And they don't break character. And the thing I was impressed with Harry Potter, we had someone asking me if Cale had gone online and what was his house and all of that. So asking the parents questions about the kids so they can personalize the experience for the kids and make a better experience for them, which, you know, if you're cynical, you go, okay, it's going to make people buy more. But I really thought that that was that extra level of theme in theme parks that, you know, helps the whole experience be more magical. Now, Cal had an amazing experience, like a one-off thing, where at the beginning of the day he was a bit over it. By the end of the day, he's like, "Oh, I want to go to Hogwarts, and I want every." So, being a horrible collector parent myself, I'm like, right, well, buy one of everything you want, kind of thing. And because we did that, we were talking to the cast who were, you know, suiting him up and measuring him and stuff like that. Did you go and did you see the night show and things like that at Hogwarts?
When we went, the night show was temporarily shut down just as a result of it. We went at Halloween.
Yeah.
So the park was closed at night for Halloween Horror Nights, which we also went to. But unfortunately,
Okay.
the entire Hogwarts section was closed for that because I think it just would have been too difficult to have, you know, the chainsaw wielding maniacs and then
With
Harry
kids.
and then
Yes.
you know the G-rated Harry Potter over here. It doesn't quite work. Also, I don't know if they had worked out how to do the ghost effects
Okay.
quite right. And you know, they could have done things, but you know, they chose not to. Oh
So
well. But yes,
they
I did cry with joy the day I got there, and I walked up to that gate and entered Hogwarts. And so
well,
yes.
they asked us if we were staying around for the light show, and we said we were. And they said, well, go to this area and stand on this sort of brick that has a symbol on here, and it's the best place to see the light show tonight. So we were like, okay, that was very nice of them. And then when we went to that area and stood in that place, we're like, this doesn't seem like the best place to see the light show at all. But what we didn't know, because they knew Carl had just been decked out in all Hogwarts costumes, was he was about to become part of the show. So when he was there, like a wizard came up and said, oh, you're a good Hufflepuff. Do you want to come and start the show? So he got to go up and use his wand and be in full costume and command, which looked magical. I couldn't work out what they actually did until I looked it up online later, and it was all done with drones. But it was a big sky show at night with sort of fireworks and laser lights and drone show, which was absolutely amazing. So that was a fantastic experience. And even without that happening with Cal, I would absolutely recommend anyone who's a little bit cynical and jaded and wants some magic in their life to go and check out the Harry Potter land at Universal Studios, because it will make you feel like a little kid again.
If we want to bring up a photo, you can view me as an adult woman looking like a small child, so happy that I was at Hogwarts. So yeah, it really is a magical experience, and I do highly recommend it to everyone. It is a little bit, you're right, there is a bit of a cynical. It's very much designed to make you spend your money, but that said, what theme park isn't?
Yeah.
Moving right along, we have Movie World on the Gold Coast. Aaron, please tell me about Movie World on the Gold Coast.
Now, I don't know if this still happens. I guess it's all tied into Schoolies Week and stuff like that. But everybody's rite of passage when I was growing up, especially when you first got your license, was hopping on the Hume and just driving to Queensland and spending a weekend and going to Movie World. And I got my license and I did exactly that. I drove up with a friend and we went to Movie World and thought it was the best thing ever. Movie World is interesting because theme parks in Australia are a little bit behind the rest of the world. I guess we have some really awesome rides, and there's great designs and great rides. And I don't know if it's just because the cast at the park have Australian accents, but when you see American characters like Scooby-Doo and Shaggy sounds like, you know, not Shaggy from the cartoon, but Shaggy from, you know, out of Brisbane area. It's a
Shagger from
little bit.
down the pub. Shagger
Yes.
from the pub. He's going to
Yeah.
ask you for a cigarette after the show. Yeah.
Yeah. I think more recently when I've gone, they've kind of maybe got people who can do the accents and create it more. I think what probably happens, they hire a lot of people for multiple roles, and then someone will click in one role and they stay in that role. And that makes sort of, once it's more established, better. But again, one of those parks that, especially if you're into DC movies, is a must go to in Australia. It opened up with the Batman ride. They introduced the the Gremlins ride, which was changed to the Scooby-Doo ride. They had the Police Academy stunt show, and surprisingly, they put all their eggs in one basket and they went for the Waterworld show, which lasted for years and years and years, even though the movie was a total bomb.
Interestingly, the Waterworld show still running at Universal. They ran it at Universal when we were there. An interesting choice, a very odd choice. I've never seen the movie, but I know it was a complete flop. So interesting that it was still running in 2019.
Yes. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Again, being in Australia, we're not exactly the hub of movies, but a lot of stuff is filmed on the Gold Coast. This started, I guess, for me it seems recent when I was in high school, but now that's 40 years ago, 30 years ago, so it has been a while. And you'll often find that stuff gets made on the Gold Coast, and rather than ship it back to America, they ship it to Movie World. And so I've seen Batmobiles there and props and things from different Marvel and DC stuff. It's interesting because of the copyrights of what's in the park as to what they can show and what's there. But there's been different times where they've had Scooby-Doo shows, and they've had a lot of other shows that have been really, really interesting. As a geek and someone who's into theme parks, it is probably the crown jewel in Australia for movie parks.
So I personally really want to go because I love Scooby-Doo, and that Scooby-Doo roller coaster, it's basically, if you've seen the Scooby-Doo movie, which interestingly was filmed in Australia, the first one with I nearly said Robert Downey Jr., but the other one, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar, that fantastic movie, it is basically just an ad for a theme park. And I've always dreamed of going to Spooky Island, and knowing that they still have that Spooky Island style roller coaster at Movie World absolutely is a selling point for me. And now I found that it's apparently, you've told me it's a rite of passage to drive down when you get your license. As a 30-year-old who yet does not have a driver's license, maybe that's what I'll do when I get mine.
Road trip sounds fantastic. The only downside for the Scooby-Doo roller coaster for me, it was a re-theme of the Gremlins roller coaster, and that was pretty cool as well, seeing Gremlins hanging all over the roller coaster and things like that. The Gremlins from that wound up in auctions and in Planet Hollywoods all over the world, and they were actually sold as screen used ones. So a lot of the screen used ones actually were from the Warner Brothers Movie World theme park, and were, I guess, screen used on the roller coasters, but never saw any celluloid action.
Close enough, I suppose. So hopefully I will get there one day, and then I'll be able to have a opinion on that. But hopefully there's not any more unfortunate incidents there until then. Moving right along, what have we got next? We have, yes, Krusty Land at Universal Studios. What a fantastic place.
The crustiest place on earth. Krusty Land is fantastic because what I was saying about Harry Potter being cynical, Krusty Land is cynical and totally embraces it because it's part of the Krusty persona. So when you go to Krusty Burger, and yes, you can go to Krusty Burger, the burgers are outrageously expensive. I think for the three of us, we got a burger each, fries and drinks, and that was about $100 Australian. I got the burger, the clogger, the fattiest burger I could get. But you could get donuts that were as big as your head from the Quickie Mart, the giant donuts. They had the Cookie Colossus store, and they had the Lard Lads and things like that. They have an amazing ride, the Simpsons ride. The disappointing thing about that, it's the ride that they converted the Back to the Future ride into. And I don't know if anyone ever got onto the Back to the Future ride. It was fantastic. And I mean, as a theme park experience, they're both great rides. But boy, I wish they'd kept that Back to the Future ride because it was an absolute classic. Like the Indiana Jones ride, they got Christopher Lloyd, and he filmed new material, and Biff filmed new material. And as you went through the different sections of the ride, there was all different new material. There was props from the movies. Basically, the ride was you climbed into a 6-seater DeLorean, and it was like on a flight control gimbal, and then they projected the ride onto a huge dome, which is kind of how they filmed the new Star Wars movies. And because the flight control moves around and the images on the dome match the movements, it really did feel like you were flying around in a DeLorean, and it was absolutely stunning. Now they do the same thing with the Simpsons ride, but it's even though it's almost exactly the same ride, because the Simpsons is more themed for kids, it isn't as intense, and it's more of a funny story that goes along with the ride rather than an action ride. Did you get to ride the Simpsons ride?
I've got an admission. I didn't. So I'd found a list online. So my issue with going on roller coasters as a child is I don't like vomit. I don't want to vomit. I don't want to see anyone else vomit. Vomit, no, not for me. No, thank you. And I found a list online which was basically which rides to avoid if you get motion sick. And I found one that said of all the rides at both Disneyland and Universal Studios, the Simpsons ride is the one that has the most likely to make anyone sick. And apparently it is the most likely ride of both of those parts to have people throw up on. So I just decided not to do it. Also, my partner, he went on the Back to the Future ride when he was a child, and he said he felt very, very sick afterwards and also got whiplash. So we chose to skip that one. I kind of regret it, but at the same time, I'm glad I didn't get sick, so it's fine.
Yeah, I can understand, because the Simpsons ride is a motion roller coaster almost, but then it's technicolor in your face Simpsons stuff as well. So yeah, if you don't want to be sick, that would probably be one to avoid.
Yeah. Look, I did though have a different experience in the Krusty Land and the Simpsons area of Universal. Because we went to Halloween Horror Nights, we got to experience the Treehouse of Horror version of Krusty Land and everything like that, which was fantastic. So we went to Krusty Burger. We had our burgers while on screens were just playing little clips from Treehouse of Horror, and it was playing the the Treehouse of Horror music everywhere you went in the area. The lighting was all spooky. It was a fantastic time. As somebody who loves Halloween, loves The Simpsons, and loves those Halloween episodes, Kang and Kodo stuff everywhere. It was fantastic.
That would have been fantastic. When I was in Krusty Burger, they were playing every clip of The Simpsons that mentioned Krusty and Krusty Burgers, so it was kind of themed that way.
That's another way of doing it. Yeah. All right, next one we have Universal Studios Hollywood and the Mummy ride, and what else have we got there? Aaron, walk us through this.
Yeah, so this was kind of just a couple of the other rides there that probably we can just talk about a little bit. There's the Transformers experience and there's the Mummy ride, and they're both exact opposites from each other. The Mummy ride is a real roller coaster and was probably my favorite ride there when I went, because I didn't know what to expect, and it was basically unusual because you do the whole roller coaster forward, go through almost like an Indiana Jones type adventure but mummy themed, and then you get to the end and it's quite an extreme roller coaster, and you do the whole thing backwards. So you sort of get to the end of it, think it's going to stop, and then you get whiplash back and go all the way back through the ride again backwards. The other thing with the Mummy ride, it combines a lot of practical, you going through the ride, with visual effects as well, which I found quite impressive. The Transformer ride is the opposite, where the whole thing was on screens and not that impressive, I found. So you can find stuff that's themed on movies where they've obviously cashed in on stuff as quickly as they can. Maybe something like Transformers, where it's going to be hard to build realistic Transformers for a reasonable price. They're going for the CGI version of it. But the Mummy ride I'd go on again. The Transformer ride I'd probably give a miss. So if you're going to Universal and you want to skip one because you haven't got a lot of time, the Transformer ride I didn't find that impressive.
I did ride both of those ones, and yes, I barely remember the Transformers ride, but the Mummy ride, that horrified me. I did not expect it to go backwards. There's a part in the middle where you feel bugs on your feet, which is an incredible moment. The theming of that ride is so brilliant. It's one that I think about all the time. At the time, I didn't want to ride it again. I only wanted to ride it once, and I was like, I'm done. That's enough. I think the line was quite long as well, which helped. But it's one of those ones that I do keep thinking about and being like, I would love to ride that again, because it was a fantastic time.
It is an interesting one. I think it was the only ride there where before you get on it, they have lockers and they make you take all your sunglasses, your hats, your everything off and put it in a locker. And when they did that, I'm like, oh, this is going to be more intense than I thought it was going to be.
I can't remember if there was an inversion on that ride or not. So I don't remember if you went upside down at all. But it was fast.
Yeah, it was fast. Yeah. I don't think there was an inversion.
Did you have a chance to go on the Jurassic World / Jurassic Park ride when you were there?
I did, and that's interesting because they had just rethemed it to Jurassic World. It had just reopened a couple of weeks before. It used to be the Jurassic Park water ride, and it's still a water ride, and they'd added more visual effects. So basically, they'd replaced the T-Rex with the what is it? The
Indominus Rex.
Indominus Rex, yeah.
Yeah.
And they'd done a section which was giant screens where you go underwater and you see the huge, not megalodon, but the underwater. Interestingly, that ride broke down when we were in the underwater bit.
Oh.
So we sat. It was quite nice because we were there on a very, very hot day, and we were underwater in the tunnel and watching the film loop of the dinosaur come up and bang into the wall, and then the wall would crack. But then because it thought we had moved on, it'd all fix up again and do the loop again. So we were there for about 15 minutes while they fixed whatever issue they had. Did you ride that one?
I did. Well, we rode it twice. We rode it on the first day. Just Rod and I, the rest of our group, they decided they didn't want to wait I think it was a nearly 2-hour wait. So they went and did other things. And we went, no, let's ride. Let's wait in that line and get it done. It's a hot day. Let's do it. So that was very good. Speaking of things breaking down, though, we did have an experience. The first time we rode the one of the Harry Potter rides, it actually broke down, and we did the entire ride without visual, without the screen in front of us. So we just went around with nothing. You could hear the sounds, but you were just moving up and down, and there was nothing to look at, which was a very weird experience. But the biggest breakdown we had on our trip was the Cars ride. We were on the Cars ride. It broke down, and we were probably sitting out there for about, I would say, at least 30 minutes. But they then let us ride it about 3 times in a row after that as a thank you for waiting. I think somebody had dropped their cap on the thing, but that's just how serious Disney are about shutting it down the second there's anything out of the way.
Yes.
Dags just said the E.T. ride in Universal broke down when Steven Spielberg was on board in the bike over the city. Oh dear.
So even it'll break down for anyone. We had the same problem on the Toy Story ride where a kid dropped their cap and they had to stop the whole ride for about 15 minutes to make sure that the cap was picked up and there was nothing wrong before they started it up again.
Yeah, they're very serious about that there. And I think that is better because you don't want to get one of those unfortunate stories you get, unfortunately, often with I know at Dream World and Movie World have had a couple of cases where Australians have that she'll be right attitude, which does not go well with that big machinery, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, no. They don't go wrong very, very often, but when there is an accident, it usually involves much more than just a bruise.
Yeah, I think it was the first time I heard the term injuries not compatible with life, which is a horrible term. And when you hear that, you're like, wait, what does that mean? Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. So
right.
Did you know Disney has a policy of no one has ever died at Disneyland because they don't let any doctors pronounce anyone dead till they're out of the park?
That explains it. I did hear that, nobody's ever died at Disneyland, but I didn't know that was the reason why, because I have heard of some staff members, mainly not guests, but staff members having injuries and things like that there, unfortunately, by getting too close to machinery in places they weren't supposed to be, which is very sad.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. But moving right along, we do have the wonderful Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland.
Yeah, so the last time we went on a holiday, and it was just before the lockdowns. This was what inspired me to go, and it was the opening of Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. And I can say it is, without a doubt, probably my favorite and the most immersive world I've ever been in a theme park. Because Disney are trying to capture sort of everyone. It isn't a particular planet from any movie. They've done sort of a theme park that captures all of the different Star Wars movies at once. You've got the Millennium Falcon, and you've got stormtroopers walking around, and you've got members of the Resistance who are cast members, and then you've got Jedis walking around. Again, a bit like Universal, you can be cynical and say this is all a giant way to suck money, but let's face it, anyone who's going there because they love Star Wars probably wants to spend their money on collectibles and memorabilia. And I have to say, being in Australia, and buying replicas and things like that. The stuff that was on sale in the Disney parks was absolutely A-grade quality when it came to the replicas, and it was less buying them in Disney than it was, buying a master replica lightsaber or something like that here. So I thought it was very reasonable. I know other people have said, oh, it's all a bit of a rip-off, but I thought it was a really amazing experience. Did you enjoy it? Did Rod enjoy it?
We had a fantastic time. So Rod, he got the lightsaber. I decided not to because it was very expensive. So we were just like, we'll just get that. He can have that. And I decided I'd get a droid, which then he saw me making my droid and thought it looked so much fun that he made his own as well. So we both got droids in the end.
Yes.
But oh, hello Valkyrie. She's decided it's time to say hello. So Valkyrie, everyone, Valkyrie. So yes, so we did have a wonderful time there, and it was part of our reason for going as well when we did in 2019. But yeah, look, it was just a fantastic experience. We went before, I think what's it called? The Rise of the Resistance, is it? The other ride, the second ride, which unfortunately kept getting delayed, but we did miss out on that one. But honestly, riding the Millennium Falcon, getting to pilot that and go to the cantina, hang out with DJ Rex, all of that, it was completely worth it. And the theming in that world is just so incredible. They absolutely outdid themselves. One of my favorite things was while you were there, they would refer to every item, the cost of every item in credits. Yeah. And if you said, oh, whereabouts can I get this food, or where can I get this? They would say, I believe that's off world. And they'd I'm sorry, she's decided she's really hello Valkyrie. Yes, Valkyrie
wants some attention.
She wants attention. She probably wants dinner. But yes, she I can't remember what I was saying. Aaron, talk.
Yeah, so I found the theming amazing, and what you were saying about how the cast were very aware of stuff and were able to be very helpful but stay in character. And what you were saying about the droids and stuff, again, Kale was, it's Star Wars, I'm not so interested. And I had the budget to build one droid. And of course, after being there half an hour, he's like, I think I do want to build a droid. And I have to say, the Build-A-Droid is one of the only shops I've ever seen that had a queue on it to go in and buy expensive stuff. It's basically the inside almost of a Jawa sand crawler, and there's just thousands of droid parts on conveyor belts, and you go and you either get a BB unit or an R2 or an R5 unit, and you pick about 10 different components off the conveyor belts, and then you take it to the middle of the shop, and there's all these special tools that look futuristic that put it together. And then it is one of those places where once you put the droid together, you can choose the personality for the chip when you activate it. And when you walk around, the cast members must have different chips on them. So if you choose an Imperial droid, you go by Stormtroopers or something and they will be fine. But if you've chosen a Rebel droid, they will make cooing sounds and worried sounds and tremble when you go by Stormtroopers, which I thought was really, really cool as well. So it is that extra level of detail that you get in the Disney parks that you don't see anywhere else.
Mm. Unfortunately, they were out of personality chips when we went, but it was still an incredible time. And if anyone here is interested and thinking, shouldn't I, absolutely do it. It's absolutely worth it. Aaron, this looks like a question for you. Has there ever been a Doctor Who ride?
Yeah, there was a Doctor Who ride, and it was a Dalek, and you put 20 cents in and it rocks backwards and forwards. They're quite rare. If anyone's got one, I would absolutely love one, but that's the only Doctor Who ride I think I've ever known at. None of that said, there has been the Doctor Who experience, which is kind of one of those walking tours where you go through from room to room with different. It's not exactly a theme park. It was more of a studio tour kind of thing that was interactive with actors. So there has been that, and I could have put that in, but we were looking mainly at theme parks. So I've stuck with theme parks for this episode.
No, fair enough. I am very sorry. My cat is just being incredibly demanding tonight. So we have the next one was Jurassic World, which I think we already sort of touched on. Was there anything else you wanted to add on Jurassic World, Aaron?
No, this was just the one. They rethemed the Jurassic Park one that had been at Universal for about 20 years, and it was basically the same ride, and they put new dinosaurs and a new section in it. So it was pretty cool. And if you love giant dinosaurs, I tell you what, it'd scare the kids. They look like real dinosaurs.
Yeah, they absolutely do. So what did we have up next? The Tron ride, which is the Space Mountain at, is that Hong Kong or Tokyo, that one?
I think that one's actually at China. It is at
Shanghai. I always forget
Shanghai. Yeah, and
Shanghai.
this is another one of those that's up there with the Pandora Avatar land, where I would love this to be a roller coaster that was all the parks. And what I find amazing about this roller coaster, you go through the roller coaster hunched over like you're riding a light cycle. So most roller coasters I've seen, you sit in or you sort of hang below. This one, you actually get in light cycle position and you go around the roller coaster like you're riding a light cycle, which would be absolutely amazing. And like you said, it's a dark inside black light experience, a lot like the original Space Mountain and Hyperspace Mountain, what it is now. So I think that would be an absolutely amazing experience for a Tron fan, which I am one. And I'd love to know what merchandise they've got there as well, because it would be all this exclusive Tron merchandise that you can only get at Shanghai Disney.
Yeah, because it's definitely one of the few rides that there's a joke in Disney park scenes that, you know, eventually everything's just going to get replaced by a Star Wars ride. I really hope they don't replace that with a Star Wars ride at some point, because it is very, very cool that they have their unique theming there. Another ride that another Hyperspace Mountain, well, sorry, not Hyperspace Mountain, Space Mountain, that got its own unique theming when it was first built at back then it was Euro Disney. Was the version of Space Mountain they built there, which was based on the world of Charles Verne. Is it Verne? Charles Verne?
Jules Verne?
Jules Verne. I keep doing that.
Yeah.
I keep saying Charles, but it's Jules. So yes, Jules Verne, the world of Jules Verne. It was in French, but it was Journey from the Earth to the Moon, and it was just this absolutely gorgeous. I found some clips online of it. Go check it out if you are able to, you know, YouTube it and you're interested. But it just looked. It was this steampunky, really cool. Sort of like the Time Machine and you know, Journey to the Center of the Earth style version of Space Mountain, and I'm very sad that they unfortunately got rid of that theming.
I think they did that a lot at the original Epcot Center as well when that was opened, and a lot of it got updated as it went along, and they lost that sort of steampunk look. It is interesting how that happens. The other thing we haven't really talked about is Disneyland, how they have different lands, and Futureland, which is one of the most popular, is also the one they have to keep updating because the future catches up much faster than the land expects. So when Disney opened, one of their most popular rides was From the Earth to the Moon, which was basically people sit around in a circular cinema and look down to the projection, and it is just a spaceship where you see blasting off and going through the atmosphere and going to the moon and stuff like that, which was amazingly exciting when Disneyland opened, and now would be what you wait in when you wait to go on the proper ride kind of thing. So technology advances so quick that Disney tries to future-proof itself, and with Tomorrowland, I said Futureland, it's Tomorrowland. That's the one they get caught up on because they the future and technology moves too fast. I think the original submarines were based on Captain Nemo as well, weren't they? And they've become a Finding Nemo ride instead.
Yes, no, there was, and apparently two of those submarines, one is floating somewhere in the ocean near, I think it's called, is it Disney Key? There's a key, it's part of it's like a little island that's part of their cruise line, the Disney Cruise Line. Yeah. And there's one, they had one of the submarines there, and apparently during a hurricane or something, it just got sent out to sea. So there have been videos online of people finding, you know, scuba diving and exploring and finding this Disneyland ride in the middle of the ocean. So that's fun. Cool. Somewhere in the Caribbean. But yes, so apparently for that very reason, because yes, the famous quote is, the problem with tomorrow is tomorrow always comes. That was the reason why when they built Euro Disney, they decided that Euro Disney would instead have what they called Discoveryland. And Discoveryland was all steampunky. Nothing was future. It was all the future imagined by the past. And that was just a very good workaround for it. But unfortunately, a lot of that theming has just fallen away over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on, we have a few more photos of Star Wars. Ah, don't you love this? There's photos of me and my partner Rod with Chewbacca, and you and your family with Chewbacca.
Yeah. And
Wasn't it nice to see Chewbacca?
we only went a few weeks apart, didn't we? I think you went
Yes.
after us for Halloween. The other thing, now that Galaxy's Edge has opened at Disneyland in Orlando, in Anaheim, what I found is when you went to the other Star Wars areas, they were pretty much deserted. So there's Star Wars Launch Bay where you could have photo opportunities with different Disney characters. When we were there, it was Vader and Chewbacca. We got there, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before it opened, and there was no one except for us. And it was filled with original props and things that they said were original props that weren't original props, and original artwork, and all this amazing stuff. It was like a mini museum of Disney memorabilia and Disney production stuff from Star Wars, and no one was in there. And the other thing we found was Space Mountain has changed to Hyperspace Mountain, and that wasn't as busy as it should have been either, because everyone was in the Star Wars section of the theme park who wanted that kind of thing. And I was surprised by how much Hyperspace Mountain, I think, was improved by theming it. Now, I don't know if you ever went on the original version. It was basically going through a dark roller coaster with weird sounds, and you would be pulled to one side, pulled to the other side. But now there's actually X-Wings and TIE fighters flying beside you, and you can tell when you're going to turn because you're doing attacks on Star Destroyers and things like that. It actually, by re-theming it, I think it made it a heaps better ride from what it originally was.
I really did enjoy Hyperspace Mountain and that retheming. So yes, I have heard that apparently it comes and goes. Apparently sometimes they take it off and sometimes they add it back on. Just
Okay.
it's seasonal, and it's just all over the place. But it's one of those things where I do hope a lot of that Star Wars stuff is relocated into the Galaxy's Edge area, just because it's sort of unfortunate that Tomorrowland area kind of it became the Star Wars 2. So there's two Star Wars areas, the less themed area and then the more themed area. And I do hope that they are able to bring some of the fun back to Tomorrowland, because that area really does have promise, and it is sad that they've let it just sort of be the redheaded cousin of Star Wars.
Yeah. When I was there, I don't know if you got to go to the Star Wars. It was like a cinematic presentation, but that was actually Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, which was one of the only places in the world you could see the movie at the time. And that's turned into the Star Wars cinema. So you are right, the Star Wars has sort of creeped through everything. But I do think it was appropriate when there was no Galaxy's Edge, and now there is a Galaxy's Edge. I'm sure they will theme it across as that land grows. Interestingly, I don't know if you know this, Galaxy's Edge, the land, was actually put aside to be Oz. That was originally going to be a Wizard of Oz section of Disneyland, and they were going to base it off the Great and Powerful Oz and its sequels that never happened. And then they got the rights to Star Wars, and all of that got mothballed.
Yeah, look, apparently that area was they had a few things they wanted to do there. I saw some plans for what they called Discovery Bay at one point, which was meant to be a little seaport area, but never happened. Rod has said Captain EO is what the Michael Jackson film was called. I actually was watching some footage of that today as well, and I'm going to see if I can find a full version of that little movie with Angela Lansbury, I think it was. No, Angelica Houston.
That's right. Yeah, Angelica Houston.
And Michael Jackson, because it sounds like it would have been a very interesting thing. Apparently, it wasn't very popular.
No.
But apparently, it was. I think it was over. And this is not adjusted for inflation. It was over 1.8 million per second of that movie, or no, per minute, not per second. That would be too much. Per minute of that movie, because the budget was just so high. It was directed by Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas was working on it, and it was just this insane production, and apparently they didn't quite get what they were hoping for, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's one of those oddities that if you were a Michael Jackson fan was cool to go and see, but probably didn't play well to everybody else.
Yeah. Now, moving along, we're coming back to the land of Oz. We have some great examples of things that are and things that were. So we have Wobby's World. What else have we got here? We've got something Fox. I can't really see what all of that is. Aaron, walk us through
It's
it.
interesting because we talk about how there's not many theme parks in Australia. That isn't because we haven't tried. Now, I don't know if you remember the Fox Studios in Sydney, and now Sydney introduced, opened probably around 2000, a massive entertainment district. They opened the casino. They opened up Sydney Harbour Mall. There was stuff for the Olympics, and one of the things that, well, there was two things there that they opened. They opened Sega World, which was an amazing gaming sort of experience based on Sega and the characters from Sega. And they also opened Fox Studios. And Fox Studios was one of the attempts to make a big backlot tour and theme park in Sydney that only lasted a couple of years. It could have been because of the Australian dollar and its yo-yoing. A lot of stuff looked attractive in Australia because our dollar was weak, and then around that time our dollar did this massive peak where it became parity with America, and suddenly it cost too much to run anything here. And the other one there we have, which is a fantastic example of, oh no, the Leyland brothers, who are famous for their documentaries in the 70s and 80s, pulled all their money together to make the Leyland Brothers World, which was a theme park. And you can see there's a giant replica of Uluru that they built, and you can see underneath the giant fire that is like burning down the Uluru when it went under. It didn't burn when they owned it. It turned into a giant petrol station, and so it was a multi-petrol station with a restaurant inside Uluru, and then it burnt down. And apparently it was one of those things that was so unpopular, no one would even piss on it when it was on fire.
Well, that's just unfortunate. I did read a couple of things about history of theme parks in Australia, including apparently there was Dream World, which was in Sydney and the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, the biggest theme park. And basically that was to do with an acquisition by Suncorp, purchased the company that owned it, and basically had no interest in it. And even though it was still incredibly popular, incredibly lots of people went there. I think there were 3 parks. They just shut it down, and
that was actually I think Australia Wonderland. Dream World is up on the Gold Coast.
Wonderland. You're right.
Yeah, and that was sort of a popular weekend attraction just for Sydneyites when you could go out and go there. And I've been there a couple of times, and then you're right, it was popular, and then it just disappeared. I think, though, the other thing, we're kind of running out of time, that we were going to look at, is there the possibility of a big theme park or a Disney opening in Australia?
So there's been many attempts. Now, the first one was in the 80s, they were talking about it, but then apparently they had multiple meetings, they had multiple plans, everything was set up, and then at the last minute, what's his name? Not Katzenberg, the head of Disney at the time, Michael Eisner, looked at it and went, I want to go to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong Disneyland is what the Australian Disneyland would have been, and that one was meant to be somewhere on the Gold Coast. And I think that might have even been before Movie World and all that opened. So that was a long time ago. Yes. The next attempt was in the 90s. They were talking about it. It was meant to coincide with the Sydney Olympics, and it was meant to be in Sydney. There were all sorts of things, including apparently one of the big issues with it was the Imagineers, none of them were Australian. So there was like walkabout rides, and there was a lot of Aboriginal inspired rides that were very not in any way based on Aboriginal practices. And apparently that was part of what sent that one down. And then there was Disney Pier or Disney something in Sydney, which was planned. They were going to buy Disney Quay, I think it was going to be called. They were going to buy an entire area and basically make this arts community. There was meant to be a university there, and that was going to be a big Disney foothold in the Southern Hemisphere. And then, of course, the most recent example being Marvel Stadium, which was just before the pandemic. They opened a shop. They had all the theming, and that theming is just vanishing by the day. You look it up online, and I know the day-to-day operations of Marvel Stadium have reverted back to AFL Australia, and pretty much all of the a lot of the stuff they opened is gone. The shop's gone, and hopefully some of it comes back when they finish their refurbishments. But I don't know how much of it is going to. Aaron.
Yeah, so basically, we're right out of time, but I've heard
Yeah.
we'll never get a Disney in Melbourne or Sydney because the weather is not good enough. They need more sun and more days where people are going to be able to visit. I have heard there was a big push to get one on the Gold Coast. At Disney were buying up tracts of land, and then Warner Brothers and Dreamworld and SeaWorld kind of got together and complained to every single person they could because they didn't want the competition, and that kind of put an end to it. So for the foreseeable future, we will not be getting a Disneyland Australia or Disney Down Under, mate.
Deeply unfortunate, but as you said, we are out of time for tonight. Gavin, I'm sorry, there will not be a Gavin, an Aaron world, or a Dags world, or maybe there'll be a Gavin world. If you'd like to do that, you can make that happen, I'm sure.
We
But
would
yeah,
be
definitely.
first in line.
Yes.
We would be first in
Write
line.
to us on our many social medias, Sci-Fi Zone everywhere, and we will be back next week to discuss more things fan. But until then, have a wonderful week, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye, guys.
Good night.